So today's video is a really practical one. It's aimed at teachers and parents, and it's based on a set of dyslexia awareness activity handouts that I use all the time with schools and families. These aren't complicated strategies or expensive programs. They're simple, realistic activities that support literacy in a way that actually works with dyslexic learners, rather than against them. I'm going to talk you through the ideas behind them, how you might use them, and why they're helpful, so you can adapt them for your own classroom or home. If you find this kind of content helpful, you can like this video and subscribe to the channel. So now let's get into it. One of the biggest things I want to start with is the idea that more worksheets doesn't automatically mean more progress. For a lot of dyslexic learners, worksheets actually add pressure. There's a lot to hold in your head at once, and very little feedback until the end. The activities in these handouts are different because they're active and hands-on. They let learners do something with language instead of just looking at it on the page. So when a child is moving letters, sorting words, saying sounds out loud, or physically building words, they're using more parts of the brain, and that really matters for dyslexic learners. It also lowers the stakes. There's no big wrong answer sitting there in pen or pencil, which makes a huge difference to confidence. So the aim here isn't to replace teaching or reading or writing. It's to support those skills in a way that feels manageable, positive, and achievable. A lot of activities in these handouts start with really basic alphabet and word work, and that's very deliberate. For dyslexic learners, it's often not that they don't know their letters, but that recalling them quickly, in order, or under pressure is hard. So things like alphabet arcs or letter cards help take pressure off memory. The letters are right there in front of the learner, so their brain can focus on sounds and patterns instead of trying to hold everything in at once. You can use these activities in lots of flexible ways, naming letters, matching sounds, building simple words, or even just exploring what happens when you swap one letter with another. What I like about this approach is that it keeps things playful. It feels more like problem solving than doing literacy, which helps learners stay engaged without realizing how much practice they're actually getting. So once learners start to feel a bit more comfortable with letters and sounds, wordplay becomes really powerful. Activities like rhyming, word chains, or changing one sound at a time might seem simple, but they're doing a lot of important work in the background. They help learners hear patterns in words, notice similarities, and understand that spelling isn't just about memorizing whole words. It's about how sounds fit together. One of the biggest benefits here is that it takes away some of the fear around spelling. Words stop feeling fixed or fragile and start to feel more flexible. If a learner knows they can change one sound and try again, they're much more willing to have a go. And that willingness is what leads to progress. Handwriting is another area that can become a real source of stress for dyslexic learners, and often for the adults that are supporting them too. What tends to happen is we jump straight to expectations around neatness, speed, or length, without building the foundations first. A lot of activities in these handouts focus on things like warm-up exercises, letter formation, and hand strength, rather than full writing tasks. Using things like tracing, air writing, or textured materials helps build muscle memory without the pressure of getting everything perfect. So when handwriting feels more automatic, it frees up mental energy for spelling and ideas, and that's when written work starts to feel more achievable. When we think about reading support, there's often a big focus on getting children to read more and more books. But for dyslexic learners, reading lots of text without the right support can actually be exhausting rather than helpful. Activities like letter matching, word sorting, building sentences with word cards, or reading short sections and retelling them help develop accuracy and understanding without overload. And these kinds of tasks allow learners to practice skills in small, manageable chunks while still engaging with meaning. It also separates the skill of reading from the enjoyment of stories, which is really important for keeping motivation and confidence high. A lot of literacy difficulty actually sits underneath reading and writing in areas like auditory and visual processing. That's things like hearing the difference between similar sounds, remembering what you've just heard and spotting patterns, or noticing small visual details. If the skills are still developing, reading and spelling can feel much harder, even if a child understands the work and can explain it verbally. So some of the activities in these handouts focus on listening games, visual matching, spotting differences, or following short instructions. What's helpful about these activities is that they strengthen the foundations without putting pressure on reading or writing at all. For a lot of learners, this kind of work feels easier and more achievable, and over time, that support feeds back into literacy without them even realizing it. Memory, sequencing, and directionality come up again and again when we talk about dyslexia and literacy. Things like remembering instructions, keeping steps in order, or knowing which way to start and move across the page can all take a lot of mental effort. Some activities in these handouts focus on sequencing stories, following multi-step instructions, or practicing left to right movement in a really low-pressure way. What's important here is that these skills don't have to be practiced through reading and writing alone. Everyday activities like cooking, building, drawing, or talking through what happens first, next, and last can all support memory and sequencing. When these foundations are strengthened, literacy tasks start to feel less overwhelming because the brain has more capacity to focus on the words themselves. One of the most important things I want to say here is this: you don't need to do everything. It can be really easy to look at a list of activities or strategies and feel like you should be doing all of them all of the time. In reality, one or two supportive activities done consistently will always be more effective than lots of different things done sporadically. Progress in literacy doesn't come from doing more, it comes from doing what helps and doing it in a way that feels manageable for everyone involved. If a learner feels supported, understood, and encouraged, you're already doing something very powerful. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be consistent. So the main thing I hope you take away from this video is that effective literacy support doesn't have to be complicated or overwhelming. Simple, practical activities used consistently and with understanding can make a real difference for dyslexic learners. If you want to access the full activity handouts or more resources like these, you can find them on my website. The link is below. And if you want more realistic, neuro-affirming guidance around dyslexia and learning, you can subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and remember, difference does not mean deficit.